Well, last week when I came up to this pulpit, I told you that it had been a hell of a week, which was true. This has been a week of momentous happenings, and I think we're all left scratching our heads, wondering what's going on, what's happening, and what happens next, what happens now. Let me, in case somehow you missed all the news, let me just give you a quick rundown of some of the happenings and goings on. Our president spoke at the funeral of Reverend Clemento Pinckney, the pastor of Mother Emanuel AME. And I think we all knew that he's a remarkable speaker and a gifted orator. I didn't know that he could preach. And I even briefly, after hearing it, considered just turning that on for you all to hear it. If you haven't heard it yet, find yourself an internet connection, however you do, and do yourself a favor and listen to the entirety of it, because it's a profound word, and it is not a political speech. It's a profound sermon, and I really want you all to take a moment. It's only about half an hour long. Find some time this week and listen to it. It is a profound word. Remarkable thing. The highest court of this land, the Supreme Court, handed down three historic decisions. The first one upheld and protected the Affordable Care Act that has brought affordable health care to so many people in this land. If you remember, very pertinent to today's gospel, we were told that the woman who was suffering from the hemorrhage had spent everything she had seeking care and gotten no better. It's very stunning sometimes when you read the gospel with open eyes how pertinent it seems to the things we're experiencing right now. The second ruling, which didn't get nearly as much attention, was sandwiched between that one and the ruling about marriage equality, but there was a very, very important ruling about the Fair Housing Act, in which basically the Supreme Court said that just because no one said the word black in any given document, it doesn't mean that racism didn't occur, and basically established the fact that if you look and you can see the impact, even though it wasn't explicit, it's still wrong has been done, and the government has a responsibility to redress it, to adjust it to God's justice, and that's a very important finding. And the last one, the last of those rulings, and I know this is a controversial one, they ruled that the love of all people in this nation shall be honored when they go to the clerk's office and had to have their marriage certificate signed. Those of you who have spoken with me know my feelings about it. I know we have a difference of opinion within this congregation. We're all people of faith here, and if you want to chat about that later, we can talk about it. All of those things happened. The assembly of our national church, the Episcopal Church in the United States of America, elected a new presiding bishop, which I found out today at Bible study. Not all of us as Episcopalians know exactly what a presiding bishop is, so I'm going to lay it out for you really simply. Our church modeled its government. This is real quick, but you should know this. Our church intentionally modeled its government after the Revolutionary War on the government of the United States of America. Okay? And so if you think about our diocesan bishops, right, like Bishop Buddy and all those folks, the Bishop of Colorado, the Bishop of California, they're like governors, right? And the presiding bishop is like the president, okay? And so our church essentially elected a new president, and they elected the Right Reverend Michael Curry, who many of you may have heard of, and some of you may know personally, was, until the time of this election, the diocesan bishop of North Carolina. A remarkable choice. Any of you who have met him or have heard him speak know that he will do very well by this church. And also a historic one, because in the 200-something years of this body together, this Episcopal Church in the United States of America, he is the first African-American to be elected to the office. And it wasn't a close thing either. Usually when they elect the presiding bishop, they have to vote several times. Because like you've been to some of you have been to our diocesan convention? They divide the lay folks are in one group, right? And then the bishops are in another group. And they both vote separately. And they both basically have, each time when they vote finally, they have to agree. Both groups have to come to agreement about who the presiding bishop will be. And if you remember when we elected the bishop here, we had to vote 3 or 4 times before we came to agreement, right? On the first ballot, on the very first ballot, Bishop Curry got 98% of the vote among both the bishops and the laity. So it wasn't a close close thing. As a body, this church nationwide felt the movement of the Spirit and said, this gentleman is the right man for the job. And I do believe it, and we're going to continue to pray for him. And then yesterday, and amidst all the other news, this may have been lost, but a young woman, and I say this, she's even younger than me, in South Carolina, walked onto the grounds of the Capitol, climbed over the fence to the flagpole that was still, they agreed that they were going to talk about it. Basically, the governor said, we're going to talk about taking the flag down. And she thought that was a little bit too long. So she climbed to the top of the flagpole and took the flag down. And if you saw the video of it, which you can, all the way through, she was quoting from the book of Psalms, asking that the Lord look on her action of favor and put a hedge around her, a protection around her for her safety. These are momentous happenings. It's a week of great and historic momentous happenings. And what does it have to do with the gospel today? I want to suggest to you that all of these happenings are the result of bold prayer, which is something that we shy away from sometimes. We like either to pray our prayers privately and quietly so no one hears them, or we like to pray sometimes for things that we feel like, that we could probably get, like you're negotiating with God. Like you don't want to ask for too much because maybe things won't turn out the way. You remember when you were a kid, and like you knew that if you outright asked your mom and dad for like the toy you really wanted, you might not get it, so you wanted to kind of downgrade it a little bit and you found something else, right? And we approach God in the same way, being like, well, maybe I can't really ask for the thing that's on my heart, so I'm going to ask for something else, a little bit less, and hope that God maybe hears that prayer. But the gospel today, and the one that we hear over the last couple Sundays, reminds us that God hears bold prayers and honors them. I want to go back we were hearing from the 5th chapter of the Gospel of Mark. I want to go back to the 4th chapter because actually we get several bold prayers, one right after the other. And I want you to hear it because we're meant to get the meaning of it, the purpose of it. So if you have your Bible, you can go ahead and turn to Mark chapter 4 towards the end. And I'll just kind of outline it for you. We're not going to read it again. But the series, Jesus has been preaching and teaching, and then he decides that the disciples were going to go over to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And they all get in the boat together, and they cross the ocean. This is right toward the end of chapter 4. And they cross the ocean, and all of a sudden, a great storm comes up. We heard this reading in church last week, right? A great storm comes up on the Sea of Galilee. And we have some folks here. Now, some of you may know that the Sea of Galilee is not a sea, it's actually a lake. But it's a big sea. And we have some folks here in the congregation that have actually seen it. And to imagine being lost out in the middle of it, in the middle of a storm at night, it'd be a terrifying thing. Rain is coming down, water is coming over the sides as the waves come in, and they're bailing, the disciples are bailing the water out. And then somebody looks around, right? Because in a crisis, you look for your leader, right? To take charge and figure out what needs to be done. And they look around and they see Jesus. And you all remember from last week, where is Jesus? Asleep, right? They're bailing water out in the middle of a storm. And Jesus is lying peacefully asleep, unbothered, unperturbed. And one of them decides to shake him up. Shake him and say, Master, don't you care that we are dying? Save us. And he wakes up and he calms the storm. And I want you to see that boldness of the prayer, because though they understood something, they didn't know who he was, but they understood something about his importance. And nobody thought for a moment, boy, that's the Son of God there, the Messiah, and he's sleeping. We better make sure that he gets his beauty rest. We can't bother him. So let's wait until he wakes up, and then we'll ask him. No, they shook it and said, we're dying, save us. And they didn't ask, they just said it. Don't you care that we're perishing? Do something about it, about this. And their prayer was heard, and he calmed the storm. And then they go over to the other side and across still waters, and they're all scratching their heads wondering, who is this guy and how did he do that? And they arrive at the other side of the Sea of Galilee on the far shores. And they arrive in an area that's a little bit away from a town. And so they get out of the boat and they begin walking towards the town. And then this madman comes running towards them, right? The demoniac who's been possessed by demons, many demons. And we're told about how ferocious this man is, that, his hair is grown out and he lives in the tombs. tombs, right, in the graveyards, because nobody wants to be around him. His family had tried to care for him, tried to treat him many times. They had chained him up because his strength was so great, he was terrifying, but they didn't know what else to do. And his strength, because of all these demons in him, was so overwhelming that he broke the chains and ran away. And at that point, they just gave up and said, there's nothing we can do about it. And as Jesus and his disciples are walking along, this one man rushes out to greet them, and he says, "Oh, Son of Man," he says, "the time has not yet come." I don't have it memorized exactly. He says, "But what do you have to do with us?" He said, "Why are you bothering us?" Right? Because he's filled with all these demons. And I want you to notice, you have to think about it for a second, but there's actually a hidden prayer in that, right? Just think about it for a second. This man, we're told, is possessed by a legion of demons. That's like an army unit, right? Like a whole army unit of demons has possessed this man and cast him out so he can't participate in normal society. He can't be part of the fellowship. He can't be part of his family or meet his friends. And he's cast out and he's hiding in these caves. And he says he wants Jesus to leave him alone. He says, "Just leave me alone," right? And yet, at the beginning of the story, we hear he rushes out to meet Jesus, right? We all know if you really want to be left alone, you stay where you are, right? You don't answer when somebody knocks at the door, but this man rushes out to find Jesus. And I hear in that this kind of silent prayer that somewhere in the midst of it, all the troubles and the storms, being tormented by all these demons, the man within, the human being within his soul, called out for release and led him to greet Jesus, right? Even as these demons were fighting against him. It's a bold prayer because you understand that the man within him is fighting down a whole battalion of demons just to walk there to Jesus. And Jesus casts them out and says, "Come out of him." And here's that prayer. Look at another prayer, and there's another prayer, right? And this is a real strange one for us, where we see the depth and the breadth of God's mercy, because the demons cry out to Jesus, right? And they say, "Lord, don't just cast us out." He says, give us some kind of grace, some kind of mercy. They say, "Cast us into those pigs over there so we have a place to go." And God's mercy, it's a bold prayer, right? Because these are the demons. These are Jesus' enemies, right? And they call for mercy, a bold prayer. And Jesus hears even them and says, "Go." And they go into the pigs. Now, we know sometimes that God will hear our prayers, but if we don't receive them in a spirit of grace, things can turn out badly for us. And so the demons receive what they had asked for, the mercy they had asked for, to be given a place, a sanctuary, and they go off into the pigs. But because they received it faithlessly, without a sense of submission to Christ, they are destroyed nonetheless. The pigs all run off the cliff and are drowned. And of course, everyone's upset about that, right? The swineherds are all upset. Their pigs are all dead. And Jesus did it, and so they chase him off. And they get back in the boat. They can't stay. And they have to cross back over, Jesus and the disciples, to the other side of the Sea of Galilee where they were before. And then we have today's reading, right? Another set of bold prayers happen. Jesus is teaching, and Jairus is a leader in the synagogue, right? And remember, the people in the synagogue didn't know what to think about Jesus. Some of them were interested in what he had to say. A lot of them were very scandalized and upset by what he had to say. So Jairus is a leader in the church, in the synagogue. His best bet, his safest option, is just to kind of sit on the fence, right? Which church leaders do sometimes. We all have that experience. We've seen it, and we've seen what kind of fruits it bears. It doesn't look too good. His best option is just to sit back and do nothing. But instead, he approaches Jesus, knowing that folks in the congregation in the synagogue are going to say, "Jairus, our leader, went to go talk to that man Jesus, and some of us don't know how we feel about him." But he goes and he kneels before him and begs. And you notice, read it again in your scripture, he doesn't ask. He doesn't ask. He doesn't say, "Lord, please have mercy on me. Would you do this thing?" He just says, "Go and lay your hands on my daughter, and she will be healed." It's a bold prayer, a demand almost. And Jesus hears it and goes off to the house. And along the way, the crowds are pressing in on him. And this woman, we mentioned before, this woman who has been suffering from hemorrhaging for 30 years. Is that right? Somebody read that in scripture, right? For 30 years? 12? Okay, well, I exaggerated. But 12 years is still a pretty long time to be suffering. 12 years she has been suffering from hemorrhaging. And an important thing to understand, there's levels to her pain and and suffering. It's not just a physical ailment, though. That's a big part of it. We're told also that she has spent everything she's had on physicians trying to seek some relief, some kind of cure, and it's come to nothing, right? She's putting good money after bad, and nothing's happened, so she's broke now and still suffering, and also suffering, I think, from that sense, that hardship of feeling broken promises again and again, right? You had that experience where you're hoping for something and your hope has been dashed so many times, right? That to put yourself out there again and hope one more time, it becomes so difficult and so painful. Yeah, you see some heads nodding. Well, that's where she's at. But she does. She puts herself out there in boldness just one more time, right? And her trust, her faith in Jesus is so strong that she says, if I just reach out and grab basically the leg of his pant, the pant leg, the bottom of the hem of his garment, I will be healed. And notice again, she doesn't ask. She doesn't ask for permission. And she reaches out to grab him, and she does it secretly for a very good reason. You see, under the Jewish law of the time, because she had been hemorrhaging during all these 12 years, she was considered to be unclean, right? And that might have been the hardest thing for her of all, beyond the physical pain, beyond the hardship, beyond all the loss and whatnot. It means that she was rejected. In her moment of hardship, she was rejected by her family and her friends, and indeed, even her congregation. Because women in this situation were not allowed to enter the synagogue, to pray and to worship, to hear the word of God. She was cast out. And the rule was that anyone, if you were unclean, anyone that you touched became unclean as well. Right? And so she knows that here, this holy man, this teacher, this man of God, the Messiah, the Son of God, is walking among them, and she is worried about the possibility of offending him by somehow touching him and making him unclean. And yet, in even her sense of unworthiness, and because of her own sense that somehow she's not worthy to go directly to him and say, Lord, heal me, even in the midst of that, her boldness pushes her to reach out, a prayer, grab the hem of Jesus' garment, and immediately, we're told, she is healed. And then this funny little moment happens, right? Because Jesus feels it. He says he feels the power. He feels that something happened. And he turns around, and imagine again, he's in this crowd. Have you ever been in a real tight crowd, right? Like a real tight crowd where people are jostling you around, right? And imagine if you were in the midst of that crowd, and you were there, if somebody suddenly yelled out, somebody touched me, right? And you'd be like, well, of course somebody touched you. We're in a crowd, everybody's getting touched. What are you complaining about? Jesus yells out, somebody touched me. And the disciples say that to him. They say, how can you say somebody touched you? We're in a crowd, everybody's getting touched. He said, no, somebody touched me. And the woman knows that he's talking about her, right? And she knows. She said, okay, well, it's time to pay the piper. I reached out, and I was healed. And I have touched him, and now I have made him unclean. And rather than skulking away in boldness, as much as she feels the fear of it, in boldness, she says, Lord, it was me. And she feels that sense of remorse and bows down as if to ask for forgiveness. And he says to her, stand up. You have nothing to apologize for. Your faith has made you whole. This woman who has been rejected and scorned by all of her friends and family, her own congregation, who was told that she wasn't worthy to come into church, to hear the word of God and to worship and pray, Jesus lifts her up and basically says to the whole crowd, you need to learn from her. See what she did. You do the same. It's an astounding thing. So then finally they arrive at Jairus' household, and somebody comes aside and pulls Jairus aside and says, look, I'm real sorry to be the one to tell you, but your daughter is dead, and there's no hope for her. This is all over. So listen, just tell Jesus to go home. He can't do anything here. There's no reason to bother him. He already healed that one woman, and this big crowd. Just get everyone to go home, and we're going to move on. And Jesus hears it and says, that's nonsense. He says, I've come here to heal someone, and I'm going to do that. And he goes inside and they say, well, she's already dead. He says, no, she's just sleeping. Remembering the boldness of Jairus' prayer, come and lay hands on my daughter and she will be well, he goes in and he does exactly that. He just says these one words to her, wake up, Talitha kum, daughter, little girl, get up. It's time to get up. There's things to do, right? I said those words to my son this morning. He says it to her and she stands up and she is made well. These are bold prayers, right? The disciples ask for a storm to stop. and God hears them. The man who has been tormented by demons for all of these years asks to be healed in his heart alone, even not with his lips. And Jesus hears him. Even the demons request sanctuary, which should be an offense against God, but Jesus hears them anyways. Jairus, the man who will be scorned and rejected by his fellows in the church, nonetheless goes to Jesus and says, "Heal my daughter." And the woman who had been scorned and rejected by all the people around her reaches out to grab the hem of his garment. These are bold prayers, astounding prayers. And Jesus hears and answers every single one. And I mentioned that, I put that out there because I do think sometimes we are a little bit too shy, maybe a little bit too conservative in our prayers, a little bit too small in terms of what we think God can do in our lives. And we're all subject to that. Recently, here in this church, I was rebuked, and in the very best way, because we all need it sometimes. Somebody asked me about how, you've probably heard about it, about how my father-in-law is doing. And, I've mentioned it before, but he has been put on hospice care, and he's suffering from stage 4 cancer. And somebody asked me how he's doing, and I said, not well. He seems to be getting worse. I said, I'm just praying that God makes his passing as comfortable as possible. And somebody said, why would you pray for that? Why wouldn't you pray for him to get better? Which was, I really have an answer for. But there's those seeds of doubt, that gets into our heads. That gives us a sense that there's only but so much God can do, and there's only but so much you can ask for. And I said that. I said, well, these things are in God's hands. And my rebuker was, I'm not going to mention, because I didn't ask for permission about this, but I'm not going to mention by name, but my rebuker then said to me, sure, everything's in God's hands, and God's going to do what God wants. God's going to do what God's going to do. But why wouldn't you ask for the thing that you want? And it's true. I want her to get better. So why wouldn't I pray for that? And leave it into God's hands. Pray the bold prayer, not the shy prayer, not the little prayer. Pray the big thing that I want and I long for. And so I did that. It's a bold prayer. And sometimes we have to pray some really bold prayers against hardship and adversity. Another one that came up recently, and this one, I haven't given permission to share, but you've seen in the bulletin, and this is one of very pertinent concern for our particular congregation. You've seen in the bulletin recently how Morgan, Mary's daughter, was born so premature. And I see you nodding, and I know some of you have been praying for her, which is a good thing, and I'm grateful for it. Larry mentioned to me that when she was born, the doctors were doing expectation setting, right? Which basically means, look, we're telling you your daughter's going to die, and you have to make your peace with that. And she said, I'm not hearing that. God's going to save my daughter. Right? That's a bold prayer. That's a bold prayer. And they said they were talking about like a couple of days. You would be ready for the fact that you may have your daughter with you for a couple of days. And it's been going on 4 weeks now, and she's getting stronger slowly. We need to keep praying. Don't slack off in your prayer. Slowly, she's been getting stronger day by day. These are bold, bold, bold prayers. 9 years ago, the dream, as we looked at the way that healthcare costs were crippling some of the most vulnerable people in this society, the dream that somehow we would actually begin to make progress at least, the job's not done, but progress at least, towards the idea that God calls us that all of God's people deserve to be healed, deserve to be cared for, and not do it in a way like this woman did in Scripture where it cripples them financially. The dream that we would begin making steps in that direction seemed almost impossible. But all throughout the United States, prayer warriors were at work who believed that, listen, if God wants it to happen, it's going to happen, and we're going to pray for the thing we want to pray for. Folks felt like the possibility of fairness in housing, the situation of housing, was an intractable problem which nothing could be done about it. Believe me, it's a tough one, and we have a long, long way to go. We felt like it was impossible, and yet, all of a sudden, prayer warriors were at work, and the highest court in this land, which sometimes says some things that we don't at all, came together and said, yeah, this is something that this nation has a vested interest in, and we must act on it. And again, I say this with great sensitivity, understanding that there is division in this congregation and in this church and throughout the whole world on this issue. But 10 years ago, and I've heard it from members of the Episcopal Church at large, gay men and women thought that the possibility that this nation as a whole would honor their unions legally was just a pipe dream. And yet, God is at work and prayer warriors were at work. The possibility after the horrible, horrible tragedy we saw last week, the killing of 9 faithful Christians as they gathered together in prayer. The killing of 9 faithful Christians who welcomed their killer in with grace and hospitality. A grace so deep and hospitality so deep that we're told he himself said that he thought twice about what he was going to do because they were so nice to me. Decided to do it anyways. The possibility that such a sinful, awful, satanic event could give rise to the grace of God seemed impossible. And yet, somehow, we have seen it happen. 3-4 years ago, the possibility that the entire, the states of all the South and those particular ones that continue to honor the Confederate flag would begin to actually seriously think about what does that flag mean and do we actually want to be lifting it up as a symbol of who we are. The possibility that that discussion would happen in any kind of real, robust way seemed impossible. But prayer warriors were at work praying bold prayers that even these folk might have their hearts changed, and we have begun to see the first steps in that journey. After service today, some of you have already received them in the mail. The Strategic Planning Committee that's trying to draft a vision and a roadmap for this church to follow over the next 5 years to seek out God's mission for us. It's put together a survey for all of our members. Some of you have returned them already. And it talks about what moves you in this church, what are you concerned about, where do you want to see us go. You're all going to have the opportunity to fill it out after service today if you haven't yet already. I hope you do so prayerfully. And in those prayers, I want you to pray bold prayers about the future of this church, because that's what we need right now is bold prayers. And I don't mean prayers like, oh, I wish it would be nice if we had another 40 or 50 or 60 members at church here on Sunday filling the pews. I don't mean bold prayers like, boy, I wish we could maybe be certain of the church's future for another 40, 50 years going out. I mean bold prayers like, boy, I hope that this church shines as a light of the gospel, that the church is known throughout this neighborhood as a place where people can see God's kingdom at work. I hope this is a church that brings people back to the light of Christ, that changes hearts and minds, not just of those here sitting, but those outside as well. As you consider the future of this church and pray over these surveys, I want you to pray bold prayers, because Scripture tells us with certainty that bold prayers are the kind of prayers that God loves. And maybe they won't be answered the way we hope, but God hears them and honors them. And they are still needed. Because in the midst of all these monumental events, where we can see the hand of God at work, there was still heartbreak. And all of these victories we lifted up and honored are victories that were partial, right? Only part of the journey along the way where work is still needed. And I forgot one, and I meant to tell you that this is, nope, we got one. I got one. Nope, I thought I forgot it. Skip, moving on. But these are partial victories, and there's much more to be done. And there was further tragedy that we heard about. I'm sure you all heard in the news of these 3 horrible terrorist attacks that happened around the world on the same day. A factory was assaulted in France. A hotel in Tunisia was bombed. 36 people were killed. And in Kuwait, people who we don't necessarily agree with always, but who had gathered together to praise the name of the one true God, were bombed and killed as they were together in prayer and worship. The business we have as Christians of praying bold prayers and following through on them is not done. It's not over yet. Even as I give thanks every day for Morgan's continued progress and strength, as I walked into church today, 2 members pulled me aside to ask for prayers for a 15-year-old girl who is facing the reality of a possibly life-ending tumor prayers for a young woman who is contemplating taking her own life. Our bold prayers are still needed. The hope that we have seen these last few days is important, and it sustains us and reminds us that yes, God loves bold prayers and honors bold prayers, but that shouldn't be an excuse for us slacking off. Those prayers are still needed. If you look back, when you get a chance, into that story of that demoniac, the one who was cured, who had the demons cast out, right? He didn't say, boy, that was nice, and decide to go about his daily business as if nothing had happened. He longed to serve, and he said, Lord, let me follow you and go with you and join your disciples. And Jesus said, no, but I'm really glad you're so excited because I need someone right here to proclaim the good news, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to proclaim the good news of God right here in this place. And he knew it would be a hard journey, I'm sure, to convince all those folks who were angry at Jesus because the pigs had died, who were upset with him himself because, he'd been filled with these demons and they didn't trust him. But he accepted the charge and prayed that bold prayer, Lord God, use me in this place. Let me be a vessel of your kingdom. We have seen prayers answered this week. Good prayers, holy prayers that lift up our hearts. And more is needed. Let these good news, every sign of good news that we see in our lives, be an encouragement to further good works, to further prayer, to further service to God. The job is not done yet. But we serve a mighty and awesome God who will accomplish all things in God's own time. And we have this wonderful, precious, incredible, life-changing opportunity to be part of that. So pray your bold prayers. Put your shy little prayers away. They don't serve us. Pray the prayers of big vision and big hope. Pray boldly. Reach out and grasp the hem of his garment because you know that once you take hold of everything will be different. Don't shy away.